One of the things that I found is really important is just the whole concept of rest. And the word faith is used twice in the Old Testament. The use rest is used over 240 times. So faith and rest go hand in hand. If you can't rest, you don't have faith. And rest isn't passivity. It's going to be the hardest work that you ever do. And you've heard me tell this story, but I brought the picture along because some people said they hadn't seen that picture. But that was a fellow that we met in the Amazon who only had a head. And if you look at the photo there, you can tell that his whole body is about the size of a soccer ball. And there's a piece of intestine here and a head. And that's all he had. No arms, no chest, no stomach, nothing. He was just a head. And he had a pencil in his mouth. He's drawing these little butterflies. And I told him to, or my brother was with me, and I just kept staring at the fellow. And he had a box there, so I told my brother to put money in, and he put in money, and I said, put in more money, put in more money. I said, put in more money, put in more. The fourth time I said, put in more money, he looks at me and he goes, what's he going to buy, a hat? and he said, Mike, he's got enough money for 100 hats, but that's all he can use. He can't use a single thing that you need except a hat. So anyway, we went on, and that night I was in the jungle, and the chief gave me his hut. And his hut was in the middle of nowhere, 3 days up the Amazon. Somebody had given him a toilet, but nobody told him you had to plumb it. So he just set the toilet on the floor and was using it. And the sewage was just running right off the top of it, and there wasn't any lid to it. And then it was leaking out the bottom. And the hammock he gave me was above that. And it's very hot, so I've got a stick, and I'm pushing it against the wall, and I'm waving back and forth over this toilet, and all the fumes are coming up. And then, on top of all that, he had a monkey that snuck in there, and it liked to ride on you when you were pushing with the stick. And it was already hot enough, and all of a sudden this monkey would land right on my chest, and I'd have a monkey on me, and I'd look at it, and it'd go, and I'd try to get it away. And so then I thought it was raining, and I said to my brother, is it raining? And he goes, yeah, it must be raining. I said, well, how come we don't hear rain? It's just falling on us. So he got out his flashlight, and all along the beams were rows of bats. And so just bat droppings coming. So we had the sewage below us, a monkey on me, and then this bat dung coming down, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, this is great fun. Then he's sending girls to us all night, young girls, until we finally have to, we block the door and find a way to lock it. Then he sends a message, do you want boys? We go, no, we just, I don't want anything. And so I'm sitting there with my stick, and I'd start to drift off to sleep. I couldn't sleep, really. I'd just get tired, and I'd whisper to my brother, are you awake? And he'd say, yeah. I said, are you thinking about the head? And he'd go, yeah. And all night I thought about that until I cried out to the Lord and said, why did you do that? Why did you make someone like that? What were you thinking? Now, we've been talking here and we've been sharing, and it's good that we bring out this point, but my sheep hear my voice. So when you say that the Lord said something to you, I believe it, because my sheep hear my voice. And it's impossible that you don't hear him. And one day you'll have the revelation that those neat thoughts you were having about God really were not yours, but they were God speaking to you. So the question is, do you believe that God could speak through me to you? If he could, then his voice would sound like mine. Now, if he can speak through me to you, can he speak through me to me? Yeah. And so he doesn't come in a strange voice that we don't understand. It's a voice that we know. It's a voice that we understand. And the way we tell it's his is the two people that deal with shepherds, butchers and sheep, shepherds and butchers. The butcher's voice is harsh, critical, driving, condemning, judgmental. It's relentless. And then the shepherd's voice is light and life and liberty and freeing. And even when he convicts you, there's a lift. So you are listening to God, and what voice are you listening to? And really, if we're going to bed each night and thinking about what failures we are and how terrible things are around us and all of that, it's the enemy building the case, and he's the one speaking. But you all hear God. And I just said, why did you do that? And the Lord said, I'm not going to tell you, but there's two things in it for you. You think he's defective. And I said, yes. And he said, there are no defective people. There are only people who amplify one of my characteristics. You know, I got an autistic boy I've worked with for years that likes to count the hair on my hand. Whenever we're together, he grabs my hand, he counts the hair on my hand. Then he gets lost and he has to recount it, you know, as he's counting over. And I said, Lord, that guy's just absolutely crazy. And the Lord said, well, what do you think about me? I've counted the hair on the head of every person in the world. And so he amplifies that. And whatever we think our defect is, if you stop, it amplifies him. And he is the perfect amplification of Christ, because apart from another, he can do nothing. He's totally emptied himself. There's nothing he can do. And the other thing the Lord said is never teach anything a Christian needs to do to please me that he can't. Well, what's the one thing he can do? Yeah? Rest. He can rest. He can just rest in God. And what a thing to do to be in that condition and rest in God. And just rest. And Christ was in that very same condition, and he just rested in God when he emptied himself. And so he can rest. And it's very important in Hebrews, it says you need to be careful and you need to be worried that you don't miss the rest of God that he has for believers, that we honestly get to rest. And rest is something that most of the people that we meet are in deep, deep need of. And to the degree you have a small God, to that same level you're going to work hard. If you have a big God, you're going to rest. Now, you'll be accused right away of passivity, because you can't have a bunch of people resting when we're building a kingdom. But his kingdom is built through rest and through what he does. Man's isn't. And so we look at that, and we also rest when we put on our God glasses. And Christians are not oppressed. We talked about this too, but Christians are not oppressed by lies. And so we talk all the time about the oppression that comes because we believed a lie. Oppression for a believer comes from things that are true. And so here's how that works. In the center of our life, we move hopelessness there, and then we look at the true events in our life that prove that our life is hopeless. So do you know what? I would be lying to some of you today if I said it wasn't true that you had marriage struggles. That wouldn't be true. If I said to some of you, it's not true that you're depressed, it's just not true. If I said to some of you, you know, it's really not true that you've got family struggles. It's really not true that you have a rebellious child. It's really not true that you don't have a job. It's really not true that you don't know what the future holds. If I did that to you today, I would be lying to you, because it is true, isn't it? It's all true. And it all ends at a place of hopelessness. It is true you've had failures in your life. It is true you've done things that weren't pleasing. All those kind of things. It's all true. And so those true things have brought you to the place of hopelessness. And most people commit suicide not out of a lie, but out of things that are true. And so they look at everything that's true. The problem is, not everything that's true is the truth. It's true you were late to work, and it is true the traffic was heavy, but the truth is you got up late. So not everything that's true is the truth. And so what we have to be careful about as believers, as we look at this whole thing of suffering and the true things that are taking place in our life, is that everything must end at truth. Well, what is the truth? I am the way and the truth and the life. And so true things, if I don't want to be oppressed, will always end at truth. Now here's how that looks before you go to sleep at night. Father, it's true I'm not getting along with my mate, but the truth is you made us one. I'm going to sleep. It is true that my son's rebelling, but the truth is you said if I bring him up in a way he ought to go, he won't depart. I'm going to rest. It is true that I've made some big mistakes, but the truth is you've forgiven me and you've forgotten today. And I'm going to move on. It is true that I don't have any money, but the truth is you cause all things to work together for good. It is true I'm completely uncertain about the future, but I know this, you know the plans you have for me, plans for welfare, not for calamity, for a future and a hope. Do you know if you do that, you'll go to bed in perfect peace instead of perfect oppression? Because true things are there, and I think we make a mistake when we try to say, no, this isn't really true out here. It is true. But if it ends at the truth, we see God in it, and just from there we have hope. And once you have hope, you can approach the problems from the place of hope and not trying to approach the problems from a place of despair and not knowing what's going to happen. And so we use different analogies, over and over for that. And one of the common ones that you'd see me use a lot is just using this thing of saying that I got married and I went over to get the photographs of our wedding, and a fellow gave me an envelope, and that was the first thing that was in it. And I said, what was it? And he said, it's the negative. And I said, but that's not my wife. And he said, it is. And I said, it can't be, because I wouldn't marry someone that looked like that. And he said, it is. And I said, but it doesn't look like her. And he goes, well, it's a negative. And I said, well, throw it away. And he said, no. Hidden in the negative is the positive you desire. You can't throw it away, but you have to come with me in a dark room. And I said, well, you've known me since I was a kid, and I don't go in dark rooms with men. And he said, well, if you don't go in the dark room, you won't see it. So I went in the dark room with him, and in that dark room, I looked down in the tank, and all of a sudden, I saw this. And I said, well, I know her. And I started to leave with it, and he said, no, it has to have an acid bath to fix the image, or it'll fade. And so you give it an acid bath, and it fixes the image. And I still have that photo today. Well, the thing is, and the question that we always ask people is, what is the negative that you're holding in your life today? What is your negative today? What did you think it'd be like to have a family, to have children, to be married, to not be married, to have a job, to not have a job, your vocation? What did you think the Christian life would be? What did you think marriage would be? Where did you think you'd be at this point in your life? And today we hold the negative, we want to throw it away. And he says, no, hidden in the negative is the positive that you want, but you have to go into the dark room. And the name of the dark room is faith. And everyone must enter it. Because faith is built in darkness, it's not built in the seen. And that is the normal Christian life, that he takes you into a dark room with negatives, with a pile of negatives into the dark room, turns out the lights, withdraws the awareness of his presence, and has you standing there with only the enemy whispering to you, if you hadn't sinned, God to be near. If you hadn't married that person, God to be near. If you hadn't made that failure, God to be near. If you hadn't done this, God to be near. And you stand in the dark room being harassed day after day after day. Now, that is the way. He's the way, and every other way isn't the way. That is the way of the Christian life, that you must go into the dark room. And how many times have you heard people tell you, God has left me? I don't feel God anymore. I don't sense God anymore. And we try to talk to them. We try to help them and walk them through that instead of telling them the fact. That's the way it's supposed to be. Because how can you have faith if you're feeling it all the time? And if you're seeing it all the time? And Hebrews 11 makes that very clear. And this is the normal life. This is what you do. This is what you have to go through. Go through it and don't back out. Because that course can take years to be in that dark room. And you know what? You can sit there and it's kind of like eating. I say for marriage, the day you get married, you get a 12-inch pain stick. And every year you can only eat 1 inch of it. It causes a lot of pain. And you can get out anytime you want to. It just gives you a new one that's 12 inches long. So you can start gnawing on it again. Reality is the thing's 50 inches long, but I don't tell people that. But the thing is, you got to gnaw away at that thing. You can bail out of the dark room whenever you want to, but you got to go back if you want to be a person of faith. And in these times that are coming, you definitely want to be a person of faith in what's coming. And so you're in that dark room, and then one day you say this, Lord, Even if I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil because you're with me. I don't feel you and I don't see you, and it's nothing but darkness. But you said you're with me. And do you know at that moment you give him something no angel in heaven can give him? Because they saw him and they didn't believe in him, and you don't see him and you do. And not only do you not see him, you're holding a stack of negatives. And when we've been told about the prosperity preaching and that God wants you healthy and wealthy and all this kind of stuff, and the forgotten man Jabez, because he only asked for himself and he wouldn't ask for others. Yeah, and so you're sitting there and you've got all these negatives and you believe in him. And all of a sudden he turns on the light and you see that he never did leave you, that it was his plan. And every one of those negatives, he just slowly dips down in the tank and it becomes a positive for you. So God is for us, who in the world is against us? And we're laying a foundation as we move into talking about helping others and working with others, that I've got so much confidence in their negative and in their hurt and in their problem, that God's in the middle of it, that I'm excited for whatever the problem is and whatever God's going to begin to do in their lives with it. It's a wonderful thing. The other way we look at that is just say that faith is a thing where you have Christ in you. And it's like an automobile. You have two cars racing, and this car is only going at 20K, but its engine speed's at 10,000, so it's ready to blow. And this car is going at 110K, and its engine speed's only 2,000. You know, it's working 1/5 as hard, and it's going 5 times faster. Why? Yeah, because this guy's trying to race in first gear, and this guy over here has moved into 6th gear. Now, all of us have the same potential because you have Christ in you, but your potential is governed by the gear you're in. What do you believe he'll do, and what do you believe you have to do? And it all ties back into the concept of rest. And so what we do is we go along, and we're in first gear. We come to the Lord. Everything's going fine. We're coasting along, and we're just going, and it's smooth and all this. And then you get married. Whee! Because you try to live it in first gear. You try to live it out of this gear when he really wants you to shift for marriage. And when you shift and say, come and be my love and my life, and I don't know what to do for this woman, and I don't know what to do for this man, would you come and give me wisdom? All of a sudden, the engine goes, wah. And you realize the potential you have. And you're going along just fine like that, married, and then all of a sudden, your wife says, I'm pregnant. Whee! Now you're up here again, and you've got to realize more of what he will do for you in this life. And so we'll struggle for a while, and then we'll finally shift gears, and it'll go wah. And then you'll have teenagers, and that's a whee. And then, we get older, and we get sick, and our mates get sick, and then we don't have our security. All those kind of things happen. But this life is made to make me shift gears to realize the potential that I have in him.